is the cleanest of clean finishers from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
It's a very good evening, Zimbabwe. It's ZiFM Sport on a Wacky Wednesday. Yes, Wacky Wednesday here on ZiFM Sport. Your station, my station, everybody's station, ZiFM Stereo delivers it to you every single weekday. The team is here. Mike Madoda, Chris Midzi, Sean Tafirenyika, our producer. My name is Barry Manandi. On the home front today, a number of Zimbabwean football coaches are desperately waiting for CAF to resume coaching courses as it has emerged that the CAF A badge holders' certificates have expired. A potential crisis in our football. We'll hear the thoughts of the studio team later on.
In Around the World in 60, we take off in Sydney, where Cricket Australia has denied it was only interested in lucrative test series against India in England after scrapping next month's test tour to South Africa over coronavirus fears. We'll head over to Tokyo, where the president of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, Yoshiro Mori, has said that the pandemic-postponed Olympics will go ahead this Asian summer. However, the coronavirus evolves, brushing aside doubts about the event. And we'll touch down in New York, where Kyrie Irving scored a season-high 39 points, including 8 straight in a fourth-quarter run that sent Brooklyn into the lead for good as the Brooklyn Nets beat the Clippers 124-120 this morning.
We also have our play of the day smack bang in the middle of the show, Wacky Wednesday, and then we kick off the beautiful game in Cameroon. Chan, and it's the defending champions Morocco who will face the indomitable Lions in the semi-finals tonight in what should be a barnstormer. We'll head over to Europe, starting in England, where Manchester United boss Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was understandably delighted with his size 9-0 thrashing of Southampton, insisting they have found their mojo. Over in Italy, Cristiano Ronaldo scored twice to fire Juve to a 2-1 comeback win over Internazionale in a hard-fought Coppa Italia semi-final first leg clash at the San Siro. And we'll also have news from Spain and Germany for you.
Let's start with our power play. It's Wacky Wednesday, as we said. This one by King Shadi. It's featuring Mac D. It's called Troshai, and basically he's saying that he doesn't want pretty chicks anymore, but not Chris. No, he wants an ugly chick who he can keep.
Hi, my name is Sean Williams, Zimbabwe cricket captain. You're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Z.
Remember, we'll be talking about that story, the potential crisis in Zimbabwean football where coaches' badges are expiring or some expired. We'll be hearing the thoughts of the ZiFM Sport team on that matter. We also want to hear from you. Why don't you get in touch with us on our @ZiFM Sport handle across all platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter. Let us know what your thoughts are. And then, of course, we are on YouTube, where you can watch and listen to back editions of the show. In our individual capacities, it's @Mike Madoda, @Chris Midzi, @Sean Tafirenyika, and I'm on @Barry Manandi. We'll be diving into that story concerning coaching in Zimbabwe momentarily, but first, a local sports news roundup.
The home front. Local sports news and analysis.
Our local sports news roundup starts with cricket, where the Zimbabwe women's cricket team is set to miss the services of the foreign-based trio of Shane Myers, Anis Mushangwe, and all-rounder Chipomugeri Tiripano for the incoming tour of Pakistan. The Lady Chevrons are set to host Pakistan in Harare next week for 3 one-day internationals and 2 T20 internationals. Former captain Myers, who is on the books of the South African side, Gauteng Central Alliance, is a huge doubt. Mushangwe, who's plying a trade for Glenelg District Cricket Club in Australia, will likely not not fly home for the series due to travel restrictions. In boxing news, Delta Force Boxing Academy's Relay Madondo says that she has turned her focus on Argentine Mariela Ribera Valverde in WBO title fight in April. Madondo and her trainer Clyde Musonda returned home with their heads high after the boxer emerged victorious in a non-title bout against Stumai Muki in Tanzania. The super flyweight champion Madondo was judged the winner through a unanimous decision. We'll wrap it up with netball news, where netball players are set to face hard times with clubs reluctant to renew contracts owing to the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. Several clubs are delaying renewing and signing new players, citing that they can only be able to do so when the league starts. This development will see players going for long without financial benefits from their clubs. Flow Angels Queens coach Joshua Mare said that they'll only be able to sign players when there's a clear sign for the return of action in the country.
Hi, I'm Vario's coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference.
All right, let's get after it. The big headline, everybody, is badges expire. What badges are we talking about? The coaching badges in Zimbabwe. Now, a number of Zimbabwean football coaches are desperately waiting for CAF to resume coaching courses, as it has emerged that CAF A badge holder certificates have expired. ZiFA has since approached CAF to sanction refresher courses that the Premier Soccer League coaches and other CAF A badge holders will undertake during the COVID-19 induced break. ZiFA Technical Director Wilson Mutegere said the CAF A licenses expire after 2 years. Mikey, it's been 3 years since we held any sort of coaching course to upskill our coaches. That's where the CAF C, B, and indeed CAF A. And now we find out that we may not have coaches who have valid badges. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, ZiFA last held a CAF A course in 2017, Barry, and I don't know why Wilson Mutekede is now acting like this is revelation, that these licenses expire after 2 years. This is information that's always been in the public domain. This is information that he should have known as the technical director of the Football Association. So plans should have made, Barry, when he went into office, because there was already an outcry from our local football coaches who were saying that we can't progress, we can't move forward as a result of ZiFA failing to facilitate their training. And so it worries me that 3 years later, nothing has happened. We've just gone through the COVID-19 pandemic and the shutdown which we've experienced over the last 11 months. And no one has taken advantage of that time to say, okay, hang on, what are the things that we can do right? What are the things that we can move forward right now that don't require fans, that don't require numbers? And one of the things that ZiFA could have done is actually facilitate for the holding of the training courses that would have seen our coaches upskilled in terms of their coaching badges. So I'm very disappointed in ZiFA as an institution and Wilson Mtekede as the technical director of the association.
It's a big miss, isn't it, Chris? Because in truth, Mike is absolutely right that during this closed period, surely there was an opportunity to at least do the theoretical side and then possibly leave the practicals when they have to go out onto the fields for when it was possible to do that. And there was a small
practicals, Barry, even the practicals, because if teams like FC Platinum are writing to the Sports and Recreation Commission and asking for permission to train so that they can participate in continental competitions, it means that ZiFA also had the same opportunity to do that, to say, hang on, we've got 20 coaches that we want to train. And part of the training involves the physical aspect where they actually have to get onto the training field, the practical side of the coaching badges. I'm sure the SRC would have been willing to give them permission to actually do that. So yes, we talk about them doing the theoretical and that could have been done online, but I still don't think that SRC would have been that hard-nosed. That's difficult to deny them permission to do their practicals, because that's a small manageable number which you can come up with very decent health and safety protocols that the SRC would have been able to tick off.
And Mike continues to open this Pandora's box because, again, Chris, you look at the missed opportunity, and in truth, had ZiFA taken advantage of speaking to CAF and then speaking to the SRC, surely they'd have been able to do something last year and indeed the beginning part of this year.
They would have been able to do something, but unfortunately what we're seeing at ZiFA is a lack of accountability. ZiFA's our officials are very happy to simply fold their arms and put everything up to COVID. In as much as the COVID pandemic is a very real thing and there are safety precautions that need to be taken, there are ways in which various sporting codes, not even just football, can advance themselves. If you take a look at cricket, has made strides during the coronavirus period. The Rugby Association has also made plans in terms of us upskilling their people, coaching, getting their people up to scratch. They also made some plans during the coronavirus period. So it's not that it can't be done. It's not that the SRC is necessarily going to be hard-nosed about it. I think there's a general lack of will that we're seeing to get things done, to move forward from ZiFA as an organization. Because if we're taking a look at, say, for example, now we're seeing a dip in the number of coronavirus cases across the country. Those cases are coming down further and further every day. We're not in a particularly safe place yet. But if we're seeing an organization make plans and make petitions, then you can argue and say, you know what, they actually made an attempt. But right now what we're seeing is generally, unless it's a continental competition, the guys at ZiFA are very happy to simply fold their arms and say, oh, there's COVID.
Mike, let's talk now congruence, coalescence, convergence at ZiFA.
Those are big words you're throwing around, Barry.
100%. You know,
wait for us to pull out our dictionaries.
No, Mike, I received your Valentine's Day present to me, which was a dictionary, and I'm using it wisely.
Good man.
Let's talk about those issues at ZiFA, because if we move out of the technical director's office and indeed the board member technical, who is Malandule, and move across to the board member competitions. Well, okay, he's suspended. Who was Chamuchiwanza? Office is empty at the moment. But look at the executive in charge of competitions, who's Kolisani Gwesela. They are enforcing club licensing. One of the mechanisms they're using to enforce club licensing is to say that if you don't have a Caf A badge, you can't sit on a Premier Soccer League bench. How do you enforce such a rule to Premier League clubs and give them a pool of 30 coaches from which they can choose, because you haven't held the course for 3 and a bit years now, and there's no pool of talent that's coming through for Premier League clubs to choose from? Is there convergence? Is there coalescence? Is there congruence in the operation at ZiFA?
Barry, it reminds me of when the ZRP was playing hard and fast with number plates on vehicles, and yet the number plates were not available anywhere in the country. There was a shortage, and no one was producing them, and yet they insisted that the vehicles driving around the nation have the number plates. It's the same thinking that you're getting from ZiFA, where there doesn't seem, Barry, to be any merging of minds, any merging of policy between the different offices at ZiFA. You mentioned the fact that they are insisting on some of these rules and regulations that they've put in place. For example, that certain coaches should have certain badges, and yet they're not offering or facilitating that those courses be held, so that coaches that don't have them and coaches that need to upskill are able to do so. So I find that mind-boggling, but it's hardly surprising, Barry, coming from a ZiFA that has failed football, not just over the last few years, but for decades. Nothing surprises me coming out of 53 Livingston Avenue. And the real worry, Barry, is that the discussion that people really need to have around the importance of these badges is the effect it has had on our football. Yes. I believe that there is a very strong relationship, Barry, in the failure of us, in our failure to upskill coaches, train coaches, and the cry or the outcry that the level and the standard of football has gone down over the last few seasons. There is a direct relationship there, because football is ever evolving. Football is ever changing. That is why you'll get on an annual basis, the top coaches in Europe will meet together. They will have seminars. They will exchange notes and ideas. They'll meet with UEFA. They'll meet with FIFA, your Pep Guardiolas, your Jurgen Klopps, your Marcelo Bielsas. Why? Because football is ever progressing. You can't get a certificate this year and think that that certificate is going to be valid or hold you in good stead in 5 or 10 years' time. You've got to evolve, you've got to move forward. But ZiFA has tied our hands and our feet, and Zimbabwe football has been left lagging behind.
And you look at it, Chris, that's probably the reason, and Mike is 100% correct, that the reason for the drop in quality or drop off in quality of our football is the fact that we're not upskilling and keeping our coaches up to speed. And testament to that is that CAF issues a CAF A badge to a coach, but it's valid for 2 years. It needs to be consistently renewed. So CAF has acknowledged that there is need for that renewal. ZiFM hasn't stayed up to that.
ZiFM hasn't stayed up to that, and like Mike said, there are reasons for the fact that these badges need to be renewed. Football consistently evolves, and the impact that's most worrying is the fact that in as much as our coaches are not evolving because, for example, right now we don't have the courses that are available to them, we also have a situation where the technical ability of our players across, I'm going to say a couple of generations now, are impacted significantly by the fact that the people who are supposed to be training these players, to be upskilling the players themselves, are not completely up to scratch in terms of their own skills. They're not up to date in terms of their own skills. And so the result of that is that our players are not necessarily going to be as technically sound as we would like them to be. And this is across generations now.
You take a look, Barry, at our Caf Certified Instructors. We have Triangle coach Taurai Mangwiro. We have Nelson Matongorera. I think he's now with Caps United. We have Maxo Jongwe, who was the former technical director before Mutekede took over. And Mutekede, of course, is part of the 4-man team that we have. You take a look at that team, Barry. It's not a team that inspires confidence.
Right.
Where are the young bucks? Where are the bright young minds in Zimbabwe football? We don't have them because we are not evolving. We are not growing, Barry. We can't just have 4 Caf Certified Instructors. That is poor for a nation like Zimbabwe, which claims to be a football-loving, football-mad nation.
Yeah, and it's, you look at it. That's the next point I was going to go to, Chris. That it affects the coaches, yes, but it also affects the fact that we don't have new technical directors coming up, and we end up having this coaching merry-go-round, certainly at the top tier, whereby when a team is in the Premier League, they've got a pool of, and at last count, I think it's somewhere between 24 and 30 coaches that have CAF A badges, and those that have valid exemptions from ZiFM. Those 30 coaches are the ones that you're choosing from. But you look at it, you think about 18 Premier League teams, nearly 64 Division 1 teams, and probably even more at the provinces at Division 2 level. You would like to believe that the more CAF A license holders, the more CAF B license holders, it means that the quality of player, the quality of play that you're seeing, even in the lower divisions, is going to improve as a result, because there's only 18 slots in the Premier League. The rest of those CAF A license holders are going to have to go down to Division 1, and that means that it will improve our lower division football. But I don't think anyone is seeing that.
No one is seeing the entire effect on the entire football pyramid. If you take a look at it, if we have 18 coaches in the Premier League, if one coach for one reason or another leaves the country or there's a movement, it's almost like we have 3 or 4 names that we're going to throw around, and that's potentially the person who's going to go and fill that position. So what that does is, in terms of spreading ideas, in terms of new ideas, in terms of new methods and techniques, we're not going to be able to extract any because we have a limited pool to choose from. And if the entire pyramid is upskilled in terms of our coaches, the quality of our football gets better, and the cream will always rise to the top. We're going to have a better product in terms of the football that we produce as a nation. And as a direct result of that, you have more people watching the game, you have more money flowing in, and that's what we want for our football. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen if the status quo remains the same.
On the flip side, Barry, there's also a challenge for our clubs in the lower divisions, those ones that are outside of the Premier Soccer League, those that are in the Division 1 category, Division 2 category, to put in place professional setups that are attractive to top coaches, to actually see them as an alternative to coaching a Premier Soccer League side. What am I talking about? And I don't mean, Barry, to be fawning over you, but you take a look at a club like Golden Eagles Football Club, who are now being coached by Joe Lupatla. That's an attractive proposition for any coach, no matter what badge he holds. Because the club gives them a realistic prospect of actually having a career, an organized club that has got ambition, that wants to be in the Premier Soccer League, that wants to get on the continent. What you get in the lower divisions, Barry, are very unattractive franchises where some of these coaches would rather be jobless than go down to Division 1 or Division 2 to stay in a job. You know, it's unlike in Europe where, you know, if a coach is out of the game for a season or two, sometimes they see it as beneficial to go to Serie B, for example, to go into Segunda in Spain, and to go into the Championship in England, to make sure that they keep working and that they are in a job. So I'd like to see the same situation here in Zimbabwe, barring maybe 4 or 5 teams, Barry. To be honest, the Division 1 teams are not attractive enough for, let's say, your Tunderai Stans and Diraya to say, okay, I have lost the job at Ngezi Platinum Stars. Let me go and keep myself going in Division 1 football club, at a Division 1 football club. It doesn't happen a lot in Zimbabwe, and it's because the projects there also are not good enough. They need to improve.
Yeah, and sadly, it's your new teams that seem to be being the ones that seem attractive. You look at the likes of Simba Bora, also in Division 1, being coached by Arthur Tutani. Those sort of teams, you're 100% correct, become an attractive prospect if there were more of them, and there needs to be more of the out in
it's just a handful, Barry. You're taking a look at Talent Vision, you're taking a look at Simba Bora, Golden Eagles, you're taking a look at Tau 1, where Raman Gumbo is at the moment. Listen, that's unheard of. For a coach of Raman Gumbo's pedigree to be at Tau 1 in Division 1 at least speaks volumes about the fact that it's a project that he believes in. It's a stable project, and that's why he's there. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there. He would have been angling for a job in the Premier Soccer League.
If all else fails, Chris, and CAF doesn't then give ZiFM the support that is required, because CAF also has its calendar on which they run these courses, and they may not give a special dispensation to ZiFM to do these refresher courses. If that doesn't happen, this could potentially be a big crisis. What am I talking about? In the sense that if we don't have licensed coaches sitting on our benches, or at least with valid licenses, it means that even when we talk about our champions going into the Champions League, it could be a problem.
It could be a big, big problem, and one would hope that it's not going to get to that point. But in terms of our guys at ZiFM seeing the full picture and getting things together, they will likely not do it in time, and we're going to have a very big crisis on our hands.
And we hope we don't get there. Well, Wisdom Ticket is running around feverishly to try and ensure that those refresher courses do happen for the CAF A license holders, and ensure that we have valid coaches that can sit on African benches. Next up, we go around the world in 60.
Hi, this is Benjamin Locke. I'm on the Zimbabwe Davis Cup team, and you're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Around the world in 60 seconds. International sports news.
We take off in Sydney, where Cricket Australia has denied it was only interested in lucrative series against India and England after scrapping next month's test tour to South Africa over coronavirus fears. The withdrawal drew a sharp response from Cricket South Africa, which expressed frustration at the 11th hour decision, despite extensive work to establish biosecure bubbles for the tourists. Cricket Australia Interim Chief Executive Nick Hockley described the pullout as heartbreaking, insisting the COVID-19 situation in South Africa gave the Australians no choice. Mike, is this necessarily about COVID, or is there more at play here? By more at play, I'm talking about the money.
Well, I think COVID has got something to do with it. The fact that South Africa has been getting a lot of negative press in the global media around the new strain of the coronavirus. It's even called the South African strain. And that is not a good thing, especially if you consider the amount of work that nations like Australia and New Zealand have done to fight and combat the pandemic. And so they're not willing to take any risks. Remember, there was also some negative press around the postponed game, the England game, where it was feared that the bio bubble that they had put up in Cape Town had been compromised. And those are some of the things that these administrators will take into consideration. We've also seen with the tennis how hard-nosed the Australian government has been around trying to make sure that they don't give COVID-19 a foothold in Australia. And so I think that is part of the thinking. Obviously, the fact that they make less money when they're playing South Africa as compared to England and India made the decision a lot easier.
Just a quick one from you, Barry, as well. Social media is in chaos at the moment, and there's outcry that, you know what, Australia, India, England only want to play against each other. Does this have any sort of, this pullout, does it have any significant bearing on the game as a whole globally?
It's convenient, okay, to accuse Cricket Australia of that. But as Mike quite eloquently put forward, look, there are real reasons why this decision was made. Whether that was in the back of their minds, whether that was figured in their decision making, look, that's for us to speculate. But in truth, the situation in South Africa and also the situation that preceded this, especially with that England tour, has made Cricket Australia a little bit doubtful as to whether they can tour safely into South Africa, regardless of the assurances from Cricket South Africa. And yes, we can all cry wolf on social media and say that there's more to this and all sorts. But in truth, I'm inclined to believe Cricket Australia, they just want to be safe.
We'll head across to Tokyo, where the president of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, Yoshiro Mori, has said the pandemic-postponed Olympics will go ahead this Asian summer, however the coronavirus evolves. Brushing aside doubts about the event, organizers, Japan's government and Olympic officials are trying to shore up support for the Games, despite a surge in infections around the world less than 6 months before the opening ceremony. We'll touch down in New York, where Kyrie Irving scored a season-high 39 points, including 8 straight in a fourth-quarter run that sent Brooklyn into the lead for good as the Brooklyn Nets beat the Clippers 124-120 early this morning. Durant added 28 points. Harden had 23 points, 14 assists, and 11 rebounds, and the three stars scored all the points in the decisive 13-0 spurt.
Hi, my name is Runi Shamba, Mytoria's super striker. You're listening to ZiFM Sports.
The big leagues, the big teams, the big players. The beautiful game on ZiFM Sport. The lion roars. The warrior beats his drum. Battle lines are drawn in the jungles of Cameroon. It's your Chan 2021 report on ZiFM Sport.
Action is hotting up in Cameroon, and Morocco face the host, the indomitable Lions, in the Chan semi-finals tonight. The Atlas Lions saw off Zambia, Chipolopolo 3-1 over the weekend to progress to the Final Four, whereas Martin Nchonkwi Mpie's side defeated the DRC. Now, in the other semi-final, Mali is currently taking on Guinea. Chris, I just want to find out from you your initial thoughts on this tournament. You know, have you been impressed by the standard of football? I know you certainly were impressed by the Warriors and Logarisic, but just taking a look at Chan, the other matches that we have seen, have you been impressed by the level of competition, the shows that have been put on by the other teams?
I've definitely been impressed by the level of football, and for me it's just an indication of when you have countries that are organized about their football, when you have well put together teams, when you have teams that are fit, the kind of football that we can see on this continent. And I think a lot of these teams have done their part in terms of putting their best foot forward, and also just the organization of the tournament itself. I think it's been good enough for us to see the best of these teams. So I think it's been a good tournament so far, Warriors aside.
Warriors aside, a good tournament so far. Caf should be happy, Barry. I mean, the tournament has gone relatively smoothly, apart from the COVID controversy that we saw earlier. But in terms of just the organizational aspects of the tournament, they certainly tick many boxes.
Yeah, Mike, I think Caf will be, on the whole, happy. Also, what it's given them, similar to what the Confederations Cup is to the World Cup, where it's the precursor or the curtain raiser to help you test your systems and all sorts. I think Chan is exactly that for when Cameroon eventually hosts the Africa Cup of Nations. And they've realized a few chinks in the armor, but they aren't that huge. The major one, I think, having spoken to Wellington Bandari, the general manager of the national team, one thing that they need to do is boost their support infrastructure in Cameroon. They don't have enough hotels, and this is a smaller tournament than the Africa Cup of Nations, so certainly they'll need to boost that. But these are the sort of things that you need to see when you host a competition like this. So I think on the whole, CAF will be happy as to what they got back from this tournament.
And now, Chris, let's take a look at that match between Morocco and Cameroon. Morocco, where, somewhat slow starters in the tournament, but the goals have started to come. And I think they've scored, 8 goals in their last 2 outings, including a 5-2 thrashing of Uganda. So they're high on confidence, whereas Cameroon, the goals haven't exactly flowed for the indomitable Lions. So this is an interesting game, and it's difficult to see which direction it's going to flow in.
It's difficult to see which direction it's going to flow in. I think the hosts, because they are the hosts, have a degree of confidence that they'll always be able to carry into every match. But also Morocco, I think that progressively getting better throughout the tournament only bodes well for them as well. So they'll be also be coming off the front foot and be high on confidence. So can't exactly say which way it'll go, but I think for the hosts, they might have a bit of an edge here.
And Barry, for the tournament organizers, I bet you, they won't come out publicly and say it, but they would probably want to see Cameroon in the final, because it then adds to the sense of occasion in the final. It means that it'll be nearly a full house. We've seen a great number of fans allowed into the stadiums. And also it means that there'll be a new winner, since Morocco are the defending champions.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll be quietly hoping that Cameroon makes it all the way to the final, albeit that when you interview them officially, they'll say, no, we just want to see a great competition. But yeah, the host is always good to have, especially given that I think CAF has given license for, is it 50 or 60% of the ground to be full? So it'll mean that the fans will turn out in their numbers. But it's going to be a very difficult proposition against a Morocco side that's very good and well coached by Vahid Halilhodžić, who's been at the helm of Morocco for some time.
All the rivalry.
Here is Harry Kane for Tottenham. Oh, what a goal! A classic derby goal from Harry Kane. Catch him if you can.
All the stars.
Oh, back here's Liverpool 2 in front. Talk about impudence. Talk about improvisation. Talk about Sadio Mane.
And all the game-changing moments.
And Raheem Sterling rattles it home. And once more, City are in front in a trice.
All the updates from the Premier League on ZiFM Sport.
Let's go to England. Last night's results. Sheffield United getting another 3 points. Good news for Chris Wilder as they try to claw their way out of the relegation zone. Going to be a tough fight for the Blades, but they prevailed 2-1 over West Bromwich Albion last night. And then Crystal Palace with a good victory over Newcastle. 2-1 for Roy Hodgson's men against the Toffees, the Magpies of Newcastle. But the big result of the night, of course, was Manchester United, who prevailed to 9-0 in a very facile victory over Southampton, and their boss, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he's understandably delighted and says that they've found their mojo. Let's hear from Ole.
Sometimes when you play against 10 men, they sit behind the ball, make it hard for you, defend well, and they can break on you. I thought we played the game properly, so we switched it from side to side, threatening behind them. Some good individual movements and performances. So we played it the way we had to. When you play football, you just have to make the most of it. It might be the last game you play, and you never know. So and they played like it was going to be, or it could have been the last game. So very pleased with everyone.
Chris, I noticed you whipped out your Manchester United jersey today. Obviously, all Man United fans are cock-a-hoop. 9-0 is nothing to sneeze at, is it?
It's nothing to sneeze at, and I don't think anyone was expecting it. Just taking a look at their form before this particular game, their shock defeat just earlier. It's great to see Manchester United coming together like this, and great that they bounced back so quickly, because they were on a bit of a slippery slope. So happy as a Manchester United fan.
But Mike, when we look at it in perspective, and this is not to be a wet blanket, you got to say to yourself that Southampton was up against it virtually from the first minute. When you have a red card in the game that early and you're down to 10 men, it's going to be a tough ask, especially given a side that has got undoubted quality on the field like Manchester United.
Well, 77 seconds, Barry. That's what it took for the debutant Jankovic to be sent off, and a very poor start for Southampton, and they were always up against it from that moment. And the minute the first goal went in and then the second, head sort of like dropped because that start, Barry, you know, when a game is finally balanced, we saw the sort of like opening minute as the two teams sparred. You could tell that there was a bit of respect from Manchester United for Southampton based on the previous encounter. And I know the previous encounter, Manchester United won it courtesy of a late Cavani goal. But in that game, there are many people who felt that Southampton had played the better football and probably deserved to win in that game. And so this was billed to be a very good encounter. At least it was going to be a test for Manchester United. But as the game wore on, Manchester United just had too much in terms of creativity, just in terms of they just poured forward, Barry, and they attacked Southampton relentlessly and they battered them into submission. And this will be one where, yes, you can talk about the red card and blame the young man, but a lot of the senior players have also got to take responsibility because heads dropped and they gave up, and that will be unacceptable for Southampton. They'll look to better this result, and for them, I guess it's happened before. They have been hammered 9 before, and they've risen from the ashes, and they've bounced back spectacularly. So there is no doubting that they have the character, the fortitude, the ability to bounce back from this defeat and get their campaign back on track. But they'll be very, very disappointed. One of the most disappointing things for me, though, was the dive by Anthony Martial. You're leading 6-0. Against a team that's a man down. You really don't need to cheat in order to further your advantage. And that was as poor a dive as you will ever see in a game of football. And it's shocking. And that's why now you get to situations where I think people are criticizing VAR. And they're saying, how can you not see that? And how can they not be retrospective punishment for cheating? So for me, I think Anthony Martial has got to look at himself in the mirror and say, you know what, you're already 6-0 up. Do you need to cheat? Do you need to cheat to further advantage? So it's a big one, this one, because this wasn't just a dive. This was a very bad dive. It was a poor one.
It wasn't well executed at all. And in truth, the well executed bit on the night was Manchester United scoring 9, Chris. But that dive wasn't well executed, and unfortunately, like Mike has drawn us down this rabbit hole. It brings back into stark contrast the function of VAR in England, because you look at the protocol that they followed. I mean, they didn't play the replay in real time for the referee for him to see exactly how it played out, because anything in slow motion sort of looks there or thereabouts. So it's a tragedy for VAR, as well as Anthony Martial, who needs to look himself in the mirror. He's been diving this whole season, and indeed last season as well. He needs to think about how he wants to play football, whether he wants to be known as a cheater or play the game the way it's supposed to be played right.
I think Anthony Martial at this point, as a player, is almost desperate to get the goals, and this is what he's resorting to in order to further his own ambitions, which doesn't bode well for the team as a whole. And in terms of VAR, I think we've talked about this before, how it needs to be regulated. VAR itself, there's nothing wrong with it, but the human element and the errors that come are what's causing this problem, and it definitely needs to be regulated. Once it's regulated, once we see the same decisions being applied across games, across teams, I think people can begin to trust VAR. But when it's one thing in a Manchester United game and it's a different thing for Liverpool, you'll always have that doubt of VAR and talk about how VAR is ruining the game. So for as long as it's not regulated, for as long as there's too much human element applied, I think we're always going to have issues with VAR and its application.
Chris makes a fine point, Barry. The consistency. If that's a penalty, okay, if that's going to be the measure of a penalty, let that be the measure in all games. Okay, let's see that for Aston Villa when they take on Burnley. Let's see that for Chelsea when they take on Man City. Let there be consistency, because that's what people are crying out for as far as VAR is concerned, because what we see is a lack of consistency. What is a penalty one day is not a penalty the next match day. What is a handball in this game is not a handball in the next game. And that is where the frustration comes through. But you take a look, for example, was it in the Villa game this past weekend? The Villa handball. I think Watkins, Ollie, what's his name?
It was Matty Cash.
Matty Cash. That is as blatant a handball as you'll get.
Yes.
And for VAR to turn around and say, no, it's not a handball, it just leaves people confused. And that's why Kevin De Bruyne, the Man City midfielder, said he just doesn't even know what the rules are anymore.
Absolutely, Mike. All we want to see is Mo Salah has also said that he doesn't like VAR, but I don't think it's VAR he doesn't like. I think it's the application of it. Look at cricket. Bring in the tech. An LBW is an LBW, whether you're in India, you're in Australia, you're in South Africa, you're in Zimbabwe. And in that game, Jan Benerak also sent off late in the piece. So 2 red cards to Southampton. 2 red cards also to Arsenal because Mikel Arteta, who has slammed referee Craig Pawson's game-changing decision to send off David Luiz in Arsenal's 2-1 defeat at Wolves, which also saw Bernd Leno, the Arsenal keeper, being sent off. Tonight's fixtures: Burnley host Manchester City, Fulham takes on Leicester, while Leeds United entertain Everton. Aston Villa will take on West Ham, and the champions Liverpool will take on Brighton and Hove Albion.
The Nerazzurri, the Black and Blues, Inter Milan.
It's Romelu Lukaku, and it was never in doubt. He's a beast at the best of times, but this season he has become a monster.
The Giallorossi, the Yellow and Reds, AS Roma.
Belotti has a go! Tremendous hits! That's what he's capable of!
La Viola, the Purple Ones, Fiorentina.
Brock Ribery seals a glorious win for Fiorentina with a sumptuous goal at San Siro.
The Bianconeri, the Black and Whites, Juventus.
Ronaldo seals yet another 3 points for Juventus.
Tough yet colourful. The best of Italian football on Z.
Heading into Italy now, Cristiano Ronaldo scored twice to fire Juventus to a 2-1 comeback win over Inter Milan in a hard-fought Coppa Italia semi-final first-leg clash at the San Siro last night. Lautaro Martinez gave the home side an early lead, but the Portuguese replied with a penalty before pouncing on a defensive mix-up to put the Turin club in front before halftime. Inter Milan head coach Antonio Conte says his side made costly errors.
Durante la partita ci sono degli errori. Purtroppo
mistakes are a part of the game. They are a part of the game of football. During a game, mistakes will happen. Unfortunately, some mistakes are light and medium, while others are serious. Unfortunately, today we made 2 huge mistakes, and we gifted 2 goals to Juventus.
Mike, we talked about it yesterday. If Cristiano Ronaldo is able to be fit and firing and perform in this match, that Juventus were going to win, and that's exactly how it played out.
He scored the 2 goals. I wouldn't exactly call it firing, Chris. He scored a penalty and then he capitalized on that defensive mix-up. But it's the knack of the man to always be in the right place at the right time. And that is one of the qualities of a top goal scorer. He scored the 2 goals that gives his side an advantage. But also for Inter, the fact that Romelu Lukaku was missing meant that they didn't have that target man. They didn't have that man who's the tip of the arrow for their attack. So at 2-1, Inter not completely out of it, but Juventus will fancy their chances having to play the second leg in their home stadium.
Barry, Mike mentions the fact that without Romelu Lukaku, Inter are without a very key player. Is this something, he's only suspended, but is this something that they need to figure out an almost replacement for him or some sort of buffer when they don't have Romelu Lukaku?
Yeah, it's something they're going to have to figure out in terms of how they play, because I think it's more they have enough of firepower, because when you look at the likes of Lautaro Martinez and their attacking power, you have Barella's behind, they've got enough to attack and be uncomfortable to play against. It's just that with Lukaku, they have a different arrowhead, as it were, because Lukaku can batter the door down when teams are a little bit resistant. They will definitely have to figure it out, especially given the noises coming out of England, where Manchester City are thinking of making a bid on Lukaku. If the hierarchy at Inter then accept that bid, then Antonio Conte is going to have to figure out how he plays without Romelu Lukaku. Whether that's the only challenge that reared its head. This was a cup competition, so yes, it's a little bit of a struggle, but I think Inter will be fine. Even with or without Romelu Lukaku, they're a very good side.
Tonight's match, Coppa Italia semi-final first leg as well. Napoli will be taking on Atalanta.
All right, let's give you the rest of your European wrap coming out of Germany and Spain, where it's also cup of football. Now, let's start in Germany, where Borussia Dortmund's Erling Haaland struck the decisive goal in extra time after having a previous strike ruled out to seal a 3-2 win at home to Paderborn to reach the German Cup quarterfinals after a dramatic fight back from the visitors. It looked like it was smooth sailing, Barry, for Borussia Dortmund, but their defensive frailties reared their ugly head once again, and they were left clinging on until the very end.
Absolutely, and those defensive frailties are the ones that are letting them down more so than their attack. They're fine in attack. And you've got to think to yourself that in a defense that boasts the talents of the likes of Mats Hummels, there is more than just the lack of quality, let's say. I don't think it's for want of quality in that defense. It may be the setup or it may be a mentality thing, but that frailty needs to be sorted out.
While the rest of last night's DFB Pokal results, Holstein Kiel had a 1-1 draw with Darmstadt, and Darmstadt progressed after winning 7-6 on penalties. Rot-Weiss Essen beat Bayer Leverkusen 2-1 in one of the shocks of the round. Werder Bremen too good for Greuther Fürth 2-0. Tonight's action, RB Leipzig takes on Bochum, Wolfsburg versus Schalke 04, Jan Regensburg takes on Cologne, and Stuttgart will take on Borussia Mönchengladbach. Let's go to Spain. Let's wrap it up in Spain, where Lucas Ocampos' second half goal saw Sevilla beat second division side Almeria 1-0 to become the first team to reach the Copa del Rey semi-finals. Tonight, Granada and Barcelona will both be aiming to book a spot in the semis when the two sides lock horns at the Estadio Nuevo Los Camenes. And for Barcelona, Chris, this is one cup they can realistically go for because they are so far behind Atletico in the race for honours in the league, and also not many people are giving them a chance in the Champions League.
Very realistic proposition for them, and they need to finish the season with some sort of silverware. So I think in this competition they can definitely make a very good go of it, and it's a realistic proposition for them to nick this one.
So Barcelona in action tonight. All eyes will be on Lionel Messi to see how he performs just a couple of days after it was revealed that he is earning 555 million euros in his latest contract. An eye-watering amount, Barry.
Absolutely eye-watering, but unfortunately both the naysayers have come out with swords swinging, but in truth it's a high-sounding nothing because he generates enough revenue for him to be paid that sort of amount. He absolutely deserves it. Accounts for 35% of Barcelona's revenue. One man. So does he deserve it? Absolutely. You deserve more ZiFM Sport, and you'll get it, but unfortunately tomorrow because we're out of time. We've got to go. May God richly bless you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Manande. Out.